Hey, John, what's going on?
Roosevelt, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. I guess I say that every time, but it seems like it's longer and longer between podcast recordings. How have you been?
Man, it's been about 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually. You know, we had Thanksgiving in between.
Well, yeah. How was Thanksgiving? All good?
I hate to say it, but you know, I think I told you about this. My wife, she had COVID-19.
Oh yeah, I heard.
Yeah, thank God she had the shot. Everybody in the family had the shot, so she wasn't down for long. But we had to quarantine. We had to do the right thing, stay away from everybody, quarantine, and you know, we came out fine. She's doing great. You know, she had a little time she was down, but she's up. And that's why I just, if anybody listens to this, please go and get your shot, right? It's just like a flu shot. So
I've had my third booster now, and it only barely pinched me a little bit. And I encourage everyone to get that shot because the friends I know who have had COVID, some hadn't made it. So I'm so glad to hear that your wife is okay and the kids are okay, I hope. And
oh yeah.
Gosh, that's strong. We had a big week here in Shreveport with Allendale Strong. There was a meeting of the joint House Senate Committee on Transportation in the Louisiana legislature. It kind of caught us by surprise. They didn't do a good job of announcing it, but Dorothy Wiley, our president, got up and spoke, and then I went and spoke also. So there were a couple of us able to be there. I wish we'd had a bigger crowd next year. Hopefully we can get a little bit more advance notice and everyone can come speak and let those guys know how important it is that we take care of Allendale and protect Allendale from highway being built right through it. So anyway, and I got more news later, but pending. So we'll see. There's somebody going down to see Governor Edwards next week. Could be exciting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get on with the show. Who you got for us today?
Man, I am on a tour of Allendale, pretty much a tour of Booker T. Washington, really, because this person right here, just like last week, you know, we had my good friend Aaron, a classmate of class of 96. Well, I am still on class of 96 theme this month. And
when are we going to do Bird 76?
Well, yeah, we can push out Bird 76.
There's any of us still around, still alive?
Well, hey, it's some folks out there, man. We can go find them. We can go find them.
Well, bring the guests on. Who you got?
Well, I have the man that was actually in my wedding. He had the women swooning. They was looking at his dreads. His dreads was floating everywhere. They were like, "Oh, who is that? Who is that? Who is that?" My good friend George Washington and his mother. How you guys are doing today?
Hi, we're doing fine.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Just introduce yourself to the folks, because some people are gonna be listening to this on their radios.
Okay, I'm George Washington, who Roosevelt was just speaking of.
And I'm his mom, Ozelia. I'm also a BTW graduate, but of 67.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's what I'm talking about. Keep it in the family. Keep it in the family.
Hi.
There you go. Hey, I am so happy to have you guys on once again. And this one right here, I have to say that George called me after I stood up and made a little announcement at the class reunion. George called me and he said, "Man, I need to tell you about something." And when he started talking, I was like, "What? Oh, I got it. Oh yeah, we're gonna cover this one. We're gonna talk about this one." And what George called me about was his so George, this is your great grandfather?
Yes, it's my great grandfather.
Okay, great grandfather Ephraim David Tyler is a great poet. Oh well, it's not going to show up probably if I put it right in front of my face. But it's not going to show up. The book is not going to show up on the camera. But is a great poet and teacher. And a lot of people will probably hear this name and be like, I remember that name. Yes, you remember it because you were taught the poems. If you went to Ingersoll, if you went to J.S. Clark, if you went to Booker T. Washington, if you, I'm trying to remember some other schools in the area. If you went to any of the African-American schools in the area, you heard about Ephraim David Tyler and you heard about his poems. And this is his family right here. And we're going to talk about your great-great-grandfather, but we're also going to talk about the other people in your family because I'm actually going through, found out I just did DNA test. I should find out before Christmas or after Christmas. But
that'll be cool.
Yeah, I mean, but you guys know about your family roots, right? And we're going to dive into some of those family roots. We're going to have a little, go ahead.
I just said to a certain extent, I would like to know more because my mom, Anna Mae Tyler, was adopted by Ephraim and Emily. Her mom, they were from South Louisiana, Vacherie, and her mom died when she was, according to Emily, she was 5. So I have a picture of her, but I don't know anything about her. Don't know when she was born, don't know when she died, or anything about her, just her name. And her name was Ozelia as well. I was named after her. And she was Toops, or she married a Toops. So I don't know anything about him other than that his name was Whitney. That's it. But now with Emily, who adopted her, there's a few things that I know about her and Ephraim.
Okay. See, but you know, that little bit right there is more than a lot of people know about that, especially being, you know, the thing about being African-American is a lot of times, and I watch this a lot of times, I love PBS, I watch a lot of PBS, and one of the shows on there, they go into the family history of some of these people. And a lot of times what ended up happening with African-Americans, we get to that magic number of slavery, right? 1860 something, right? 66 or whatever. Right. And it stops. Our knowledge about our family stops. And without some real digging and some real detective work, you kind of, you know, outside of getting your DNA and they finding out that you're from some part of West Africa, you don't know anything past that point, right? So we kind of cherish that you know, until we get to that magic number of 1860, we kind of cherish that in between, you know, that little short 150 year period. And I just think that, you know, a lot of people should go back because I don't know, did your family really talk a lot about your family history?
No.
You know why?
No, I'm surprised. Emily told me a few things, being, I guess, a school teacher, but not a whole lot. And I didn't know enough to ask, especially about the people that live down South Louisiana. I used to go down there to visit, but I was a child and not knowing, you know, to ask questions as to who was I going to visit. She was, I didn't know she was my great-grandmother. My grandmother. She was my grandmother. My great-grandmother. My great-grandmother, that's what she was. And I was going to visit her. And I did not know. I just knew she was mama. She was family, that's all. And I realized who she was until I was grown and had figured it out. And she was gone and just about everybody else was gone. So there was no questions that I had, I couldn't ask.
I mean, you know, you hear a lot about, they don't want to talk about that pain. They don't want to talk about, because a lot of that is surrounded with pain.
Right.
It's a lot of poverty sometimes, but it's also a lot of, you know, we have a lot of people that done, you know, they really did some great things, right?
Right.
But it's also, it's a lot of times it doesn't have that fairy tale ending that we don't like to talk about it, right? It's usually, a lot of times when you talk about the great things that happen to African Americans during that time period, something bad happens too.
True.
But we're not here to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start off, and I'm gonna throw it to you guys, and I want you to just tell me about Mr. Ephraim David Tyler. This now I'm gonna say this before you start. We interviewed Poetic X. Remember that, John?
I do remember that. And how does Poetic X come into this, though? We're talking about, I don't remember talking about his ancestry.
Well, no, we didn't talk. Well, we didn't get deep into it, but I bring up Poetic X because he's another Allendale resident that's known for his poetry. And right. We have found kind of the precursor of Poetic X.
Right, and I just found one of the poems from your great-grandfather, I believe it is. But yeah, I was just Googling through here to look him up, and wow. But yeah, excellent point. The artistic history of Allendale is really amazing. And as Poetic X was saying, there's all sorts of historic sites through there. You know, I think I've told you, Roosevelt, 2% of my DNA comes from West Africa through South Louisiana. And I'm curious to find out about that history. It's quite a story, I'm sure, if I could ever get to the bottom of it. But doing my DNA research, like everybody did, I found out I'm also from West Africa. Ancestral history is a fascinating thing.
Oh, we're going to find out, John. That's going to be a whole episode there, buddy.
Yeah. How did I come to be here with other West Africans? Probably not a pretty story. The one ancestor probably did something that shouldn't have been done with another ancestor that would have been illegal in these modern times. But it's interesting to think about how all of that comes together here in Louisiana for better and worse. Mm-hmm. But, you know, for me, it's remarkable to think about. I wasn't expecting that, although I can trace back a few generations through Sulphur, Louisiana, and Natchitoches and all of that. So I can't wait to hear more about Ephraim.
Yeah, so Ephraim was from South Louisiana, am I correct?
I'm not really sure. I think he was. I should have found his obituary because I have one, and it's right here somewhere. But I know he was born in January, I think it was January of 1884.
Right. I found it right here.
Okay.
These things are amazing, and passed on June 30th, 1969.
That's right. That's right.
And yeah.
And now my grandmother lived in Lutcher, Louisiana. She was a school teacher. Well, she went to Southern University. So I don't know where they met. She never told me that, never think to ask. But they moved up here to Shreveport. So he may have been down south somewhere. He was down south somewhere, but I don't know where.
He was born, he was the fourth child of the 7 children of the late William and Isabella Peace Tyler.
Right.
Yeah, it's online.
What's in that obituary I didn't think to grab?
What a great tool.
Yeah.
We can get that on the show though later, Roosevelt. So go ahead and tell a story. Let's hear about it.
Well, as what I was told, he started writing poems at a young age. And he has some books that were, from way back. The book that Roosevelt has is an old book, but he has some even further back than that, because they're all, I have them here and they're all tattered. I don't know what year because they don't have the year in them. But he wrote about the Black life, and I guess you could say not necessarily his life, but you know how it was back in the day. About because in his poetry he uses the word colored, and a lot of his poetry he uses the word colored because that was what was used back in those days. Black wasn't used, and he wrote about a lot about God. He has poems about let's see, baseball player. What was his name? Black baseball player. Let me go in this book and see if I can. Jackie Robinson. He wrote all kinds of poetry. He has poetry about the usher board in churches, a sick, sick world, and let's see, a prayer of thanks, war in Korea. Just a whole lot of Easter greetings, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all kinds of faith, you know, wrote about faith. Even Thomas Edison, he got a poem about Edison. Just a whole lot of poems. Sally Hogan, whoever she was. Just a lot of different poems. Justice.
Yes, he wrote about the things as far as what was going on during that time.
During that time. Yeah, and all the schools, when I went to Ingersoll, the teachers used to ask me to recite a poem. And I'm like, recite a what? Poems on the table, the books on the table every day. And being a teacher, he would write the poems, and his book or notebook, folder, whatever you would call it back in the day, because they had the brown sheets with the paper that goes over, up. Anyway, he would write his poetry, and my grandma later on, I would see her ink pen mark, her periods put in a certain spot, her cross a word out and spell it correctly, put some commas and all her corrections. And then it would go to print. After she made the correction, would go to print, and he would get his stuff printed at, what was the printing company here? And just because I want to tell you, I can't think of the name of it, but it was downtown.
What about the one around the corner? Was that?
That was,
was it White?
The White printing shop around the corner, or by Mr. White. He printed the book that I had redone.
That's the one Roosevelt had.
Yes, no, the Roosevelt has the one of the ones that he had done.
Okay. Yeah, I have the blue one.
Yes, I had one done a few years later. Okay. But I used the same blue because I don't know why he chose blue for poems of everyday life, but that's what he chose. And then there was a book that was brown, and it was poems of today. He had several poems in each one of those books different. And on these books, it has the printing. It was $1.50 is what he charged for his book. I think it's on your book, maybe on the book that you have.
Yeah, and you know, looking at this book, you know, I read through some of them, some of the ones that stood out was just like you were saying about the he talked about things that were going on at the time, and really things that make us kind of capture what African Americans were looking up to, what we were clinging on to for hope at the time, or what we were thinking about. Because I'm looking at one which stood out to me was Hampton Institute. I'm trying to find it real quick. Here you go. Hampton Institute. Now, the only reason it stood out is because I stayed up in the Virginia area, and I used to just go up to Hampton, right, for just to go hang out. And you know, probably if I dated a college girl, I was gonna get smarter. I don't know, but you know, I'm you know, that's one that stood out to me. But a lot of these, you know, it like this one to retired teachers. These were, as a poet, his kind of everyday thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, and just reading through it, you know, you can kind of see what he was reading. You can almost imagine the newspaper at the time, and you can almost imagine the people that he hung around with, right, and talked to on a regular basis, you know, because that's how his poetry was very down to earth, in the sense of it was everyday things. He talked about things you would hear on the radio, things you would see in the newspaper. And that's one of the things that really stood out to me on this in this poetry book, was just how you can relate to a lot of these poems.
The one that you named about the retired teacher, I think that was about my grandmother, or her being a retired teacher at that time. She retired 1948, I believe.
Now, both of them were teachers, correct?
He taught in the schools. I don't remember him teaching. I just remember him being around the house, not really even going to work anywhere. He just wrote his poetry and he sold his poetry. If there was a program anywhere in the United States, I guess somebody must have wrote him a letter and told him, because that's the only way they got the info around that time. And he was there selling his poetry, reciting his poetry. And he'd go and come back, go by bus, train, and he'd back, you know, and a lot of times he was downtown at the bus station. My grandmother used to call the bus station, when it was downtown, his office. He would go down there every day, recite his poems, take his books, and sell his books. So he didn't have a job like we did, or teach school like she done. He had a Tuskegee diploma. I have a Tuskegee diploma that has his name. And pardon?
Yeah, I'm just saying, can we see it? Now you also have another picture of a graduation, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. Let me see. Is this the Tuskegee? Yes, this is the Tuskegee.
Now that right there. Yeah, bring it over. All right, cool. And that goes right into the other thing I want to talk to you about, is how having teachers in your family. That's cool. I see it. Thank you. Having teachers in your family, like we talked about, that was prestige, right? That was, you know, you were the middle class being the African-American teachers at the time. I mean, and my family is full of teachers. My great-grandmother moved from Texas to Shreveport teaching, and she turned around and bought buildings and homes in the Shreveport area with her paycheck. That's something that you can't do that today on a
Right.
TV show.
Right.
You know? Can you get into how was it growing up with two teachers?
Was quiet. He was quiet. He didn't say too much to me. I used to bug him all the time. And he would just sit on the sofa and be quiet, watch TV. He wouldn't say much. And my grandmother would holler from the kitchen or something, leave him alone, Z. And I would keep on bugging him, whatever I was doing. And when she got tired of me bugging him, and she said, I said, leave him alone, Ozelia. So when she called my whole name, I was.
you get that whole name, that's a death threat.
Yeah. Noah came next, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I was done when she did that. But he was very quiet. They would talk quietly. I did not hear any of their conversation because she always told me, and like being a child, I didn't understand. I understand now that when you argue with your spouse, was her word. I didn't know what spouse was. But when you argue with your spouse, that's between the two of you. You don't let anybody know what you're arguing about. And if somebody rings your doorbell or knock on your door, you arguing, you stop arguing, you entertain, and when they leave, you continue. You don't let them know anything.
Yeah. I can see that.
I never heard them argue. I never heard them disagree. I never heard, they're really into their conversation. Because, when I was a child had their, you stay in your lane. You was a child, you didn't get into grown folks' conversation. You knew to stay out of that. They're talking to each other. You don't get into that. So I stayed whatever I was outside or watching TV or whatever I was doing. I never got into, he was a very quiet person. But she, in other words, she was quiet too, but being a school teacher, she always asked, you got your lessons? Your lessons done? She'd make me go sit and practice my music. She'd time me on that piano. And if it didn't sound right, she played too. And if it didn't sound right, she'd try it again. And I'd have to try it again until this sounded right too. I didn't hit that wrong note. Because when I went to music lessons, and they had a lot of music teachers around at that time, it was maybe 2-3 blocks away, you had a music teacher, piano teacher, and you go there and you didn't get their them play right, or they're saying you didn't practice, they're gonna call and tell on you.
Oh, see, that sounded about right. That sounds like old Allendale right there.
Oh yeah. You better do it right. You better practice some more. You got to come in and practice. Can't be outside play. Can I go with somebody's house? You have to ask to go play. Can I go to so-and-so house? No, go practice. And now I had to call my girlfriend and see if I'd come around, and she'd be practicing her music. Or somebody, somebody in the house, you could hear the piano going because there was several kids in their household. So somebody was practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was doing something.
Now I remember you told me that the house that you guys are staying in now, that was their house, correct?
Their house, yes, my grandmother's house. And when she passed first, it became my grandfather and my mother. My mom inherited with him, however they did that. They say that. And then after mother passed, and I inherited. I was her only child.
Okay. And it kind of goes, I brought that up only because it kind of goes into the thing, and we talked about this when I was at your home, how home ownership a lot of times is, some people have never been a part of, but it is something that you have. It says a lot when you pass along a house that I have a house over my head. I have a roof over my head.
Right.
That's a lot. That's a lot to people. You don't understand how much that is to pass down to another person. And you don't really think about it when you are in the midst of it. But growing up myself, we didn't own houses. We rented. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to my mother about owning a home. And she said she never thought about it because she always thought everybody else rented. And that's probably how it was passed. You know, you probably looked around and was like, oh, yeah, everybody owns their home.
Right. All my friends, you know, when I was a little girl, all my friends, mom and dad owned their homes. So when I went to play around the corner at the Parker's house, there were 4 kids in there. They owned their home. When I went up the street to the Hooks home, there were 3 kids in there, you know, and they owned their home. I went to around another corner to another friend's house, and her parents owned their home. So everybody we knew owned their homes. Now maybe there was a few that rented, but all the friends that I had, they're, you know, it's maybe some of my school friends, they may have rented. But all the kids that I played around with in my area, their family owned their homes. And when their family died, they either sold, or because I know the lady that lived around the corner I used to play with, they sold their mom and dad home. I think daddy sold it before he passed, and he had another home. And the girls that live up the street, when their mom died, everybody had moved away, so they sold that. So a lot of people own homes back in the day, and some are in it probably.
Yeah, yeah. And I bring that up because, you know, going back to the teacher salary, you made enough. You know, I heard this guy say this the other day about buying a home. He said around the World War I and World War II, the home most likely only costs maybe 4 or 5 times your salary. Right? But today, it can almost be up to 20 times your salary.
Right. I found the paperwork when my grandmother bought this house. I put it up. I can't tell you where I put it, but it's around here somewhere. I could find it. And I remember taking a picture of it and sending it to my son that lives in Houston. And he's buying his house. And he texts me back, Mama, where you get that from? And I took a picture of just to show him how much the house cost and how much they paid a month. It's like maybe 100 and something, if that. And it tickled me because I know he's paying much more than that.
Oh yeah.
So I just took a picture of it and sent it to just upset him.
But look at it. That
the one told him, Mama, where you get that from? That's not the way it is anymore. I said, I know. But that's what it was once upon a time.
But think about it. This house is housing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your son, George, 5 generations. Am I correct?
Right. At 6 of my great grands, because my grandson has a few kids, and they don't live here, but they come visit me. They come and play with Jay, George's baby. He loves his little cousins to come and play with them. So that's 6 generations, if you count them.
Do you think Ephraim even thought, even fathomed that?
No, probably not.
It probably even crossed his mind that 6 generations of his family are going to stay under the roof that he provided.
Right.
Right. And his wife, Emily, correct? Did I say that?
Right.
Emily probably, she never thought that teacher's salary was going to stretch 6 generations.
Right. Because it was paid. I don't know when she finished paying for it. It might be around here somewhere. I might could find it. There's some old papers around here. And I didn't throw them away. I didn't bother them. If they looked like they were, you know, something that might need to be put aside, I just maybe read a little bit and then toss it aside. So I might get in there and look and see if I can find anything that says maybe when she finished paying for this house. But I know when she passed in 65, it was probably had been years that she had finished paying for it.
man, I'm, you know, I just having that, like I said, I love history. I love the thought of how history affects the future.
Mm-hmm.
How when Ephraim and Emily came up from South Louisiana and they put down roots in Allendale, and now just to know that their house, their home has covered the heads and given warmth and comfort to that generation. I know they just, you know, he never would have thought it was gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? It makes me feel good. How does it make you feel?
It feel, you know, just to even have that.
Yeah, because she told me when I was young, she said, if you're the longest liver between you and your mom, take care of my house. Like, sometimes I walk and say, look, I did the best I can now.
I know, right?
Take your house like you told me.
Just got it painted last week. Just got they finished painting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Dude, I asked you what program, but you know, I know you guys are talking about that. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What color did you get it painted? Was it back?
I got it painted a gray. It's a light gray. It's a little lighter than what I wished it could be, but I didn't know at the time the color would be that light. It looked darker when I picked it, but hey, it looks much better than it was.
Okay, because I remember you said that the original color was green, right?
The original color when I was a little girl was green.
Yeah, green. Okay, I remember that right.
Because I think he has a poem in here about Greenie, something Greenie, and that's about the house. I don't know which one of these books he has it in, but it says something about Greenie. I just noticed it says Greenie, or green or something. But I think it's about the house, home. Let me see if it's home.
What year was that book published?
He didn't have a year on this, so I have no idea what year it was published. Now I redid mine. What did I do mine in early 90s or middle 90s? But I don't know what year. I guess you just have to look at the poems and go through the poems and see, like the one that has Champion Joe Louis.
Yeah.
What here was he?
There's a box.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna do something that you were very mad at a teacher for doing to you, but I'm gonna ask you to recite a poem for us.
Not.
Huh?
No, you're not.
See, I'm hundreds of miles away, so I know you can't put your hand around my neck for this far away.
You're not. Okay, I'm gonna recite the one. Since you want me to recite one, I'm gonna recite the one that the teacher made me recite, or that I just went and picked because she kept bothering me. There's one in here that's called Woman.
Okay.
I'm not gonna do that one. I have to go over it. Where is that? Just saw it not. Here it is. Oh, here it is. Okay. This poem is called My. The other day I ran into it. Those Kansas City girls look good to me. I really had to stop and catch my breath. Those youngsters worried me almost to death. My. Those 47 hats and 50 shoes would give a fella Kansas City blues. I'm mighty glad the short skirts did come down, because I expect I would have to leave this town. My. When I was young, some 40 years ago, you seldom saw a woman's heel or toe. You seldom saw a lady climb a fence, but all the ladies now have better sense. My. A dash of powder, a little paint will make a woman, will make a lady look like what she ain't. Red shoes, red dress, red purse, red lips, red hat. How can a poor man get through all of that? My.
I can imagine him writing about a young man sitting up on the corner watching the ladies go by, Sam. Mm-hmm. My. I could just see it. All you had to throw in there was red bottoms. And it would be a modern form.
The woman's color.
Oh yeah, man. See, and that's what I'm talking about. It's so you feel it. You feel those poems to where they're not talking above your head. You know, they talking to you.
Right.
You know, he's saying this stuff, my. That sound like, you know, those actually sound like lyrics to a Ray Charles song.
Right? Yeah.
Could be a song. It definitely could be a song.
That could be a Ray Charles song. Like I can hear Ray Charles saying it right now, mm-hmm. Right?
It's almost musical, my.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it and those are, you know, those are just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because he has a lot of poems. He really gets into it. Go ahead.
Let me cut you off. I'm sorry, but this one I thought was very cute. I'm not gonna read it all, but it says the last and best of all God's great creation, the motherhood of every race and nation, the subject of the world's most thrilling story of human life created for man's glory, woman.
Ooh.
That's the first standard of that one.
Oh, that's a Maxwell song right there.
That's right. I hear the ladies out there saying, "Oh yeah."
I know, right?
The world's most thrilling story.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I'm looking at this one right here called The Usher Board.
Yes.
Just reading this one makes me think.
I have done that one at church.
Oh.
Because I'm an usher, so I've done that one at church.
I could just see y'all coming down, two-stepping side to side down the aisle.
No, we don't do that one, but we just kind of stand at the door, you know, on the side of the church. But yeah, I have, when we have a program, usher program or something like that, then I have recited that. And I gave it to somebody else to recite one time at their program. So it's been used quite a bit. A lot of these poems have been used quite a bit. Because I've known some teachers, say like when George was in school, when my kids was in school, the teachers would teach the kids or make them recite some of the poems, learn some of these poems.
And I think that, you know, I brought up Poetic X earlier. And the reason I brought up Poetic X earlier was because of the sense of the pride where knowing that Poetic X is out there doing this thing and representing the city and representing the state with his poetry. We also have Ephraim David Tyler, who represents Allendale too in an earlier generation.
Right.
And it's that pride of that you get from having somebody out there expressing themselves, using words to express themselves, putting their feelings out there within this poetry. I was just telling my daughter, I said, you know, to have a relaxed and I guess sensible psyche, really being a person that is able to express themselves in different means, music, poetry, even sports, being able to get your frustrations out being able to express how you feel at the moment. That's a good thing to have. And it's good for your psyche. It's good for your mind. It's good for your body. It's good for your heart, right? Because having that ability to put down how you feel about something on paper in words, you're spilling out. Mm-hmm. You know, I may not tell you how I feel in person. You said that Ephraim was a quiet man. He may not tell you how he felt in person, in words, face to face, but just read that book. Read his poetry.
Right, he wrote them down.
He wrote them down. And that's probably what helped him get by too.
Right.
Because you don't see too many, it's not too many people that can write something down and then go to the bus stop or go to anywhere and recite it. Mm-hmm. That takes courage. Mm-hmm. It does. He had a lot of it. Go ahead, George.
I said it does take courage for you to go up to people that you don't know and say, you know, what's on your mind. But a lot of the stuff that he's saying on his mind is they can relate as well, especially going through those times during that time period in history.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Even though he don't know them, he can relate to them.
And people would listen more then than they do now. I think they would give that little respect and maybe listen. I don't know how he recited his poems. You know, I don't know what he did there. I never went there. I just went by what Emily would tell me, that he would go to the bus stop or the bus station and recite his poems and sell his books.
You know, it takes a lot, man. It reminds me of you hear these old rappers, you know, talk about, man, I used to sell my tape out my trunk, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
You know, the singers, the country singers that will go around and play their songs at the nightclubs, right? That takes courage to take your art and put it out there and say, how do you like it? Mm-hmm. Right? And take that criticism. But, you know, poetry is something, when you read it, it should, you know, it should make you visualize something, right? It should make you, it puts you in their world, puts you where Ephraim was when he was looking at the woman in all red with the red lipstick and, you know, talking about she can nearly turn herself into somebody else when she throw on a little powder and a little, a little makeup.
Right.
And that's the thing I love about it. And
amazing about it, he could write something down and it'd be so good to the point to where you teaching it to others. I love that as well, the fact that even though he wrote it down, you might not like it, but it's a lot more other people that's liking it because it's actually being taught to them. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's actually great, even though he may go to recite it to people. You know, years later, now it's being taught. Remember, I was telling you about Reverend Jackman, Jennifer and Julia's father. Mm-hmm. He taught it to his kids, and he also was being taught before they came around. They would come to his church, and it was being read to him. So he grew up seeing it. Mm-hmm. Then he also applied it himself. So he carried that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
He's 94 now.
Oh wow.
Right. I want to say his birthday is in December, so I wouldn't doubt if he'd be 94, 95.
Wow.
So he definitely carried that tradition of being taught his literature and teaching it.
And that's what we need to get back into. We need to get the words of Ephraim back into the schools, being taught to the kids of today in later generations, because it says a lot when you have a person that it was in your neighborhood, you know, growing up in your city, And like I said, poetry can put you back into the thoughts and minds of the people that wrote it. So it'd be great to teach his poems and to the kids of today, so they can understand the history that Allendale and Shreveport has. You know, I know I've read a couple to my kids, and you gave me permission to put out a video, kind of video poetry. So I'm going to be working on that during the Christmas holidays and send it to you so you can approve it. And I want to make sure you see it first. So before we go, though, I want to talk to you about growing up in Allendale in the 60s.
Oh.
I'm taking it way back. 60s, 70s.
Way back in the 60s. Look, I have my friends laughing at me because a lot of things that happened in the 60s, I was in the house. In this house. They wouldn't let me out the door, especially when we had at Little Union. I don't know if you remember that. They have a little incident down at Little Union with the horses in the. I don't know nothing about that. They have a sheep in this house. Don't you leave. Don't you go away. Where you going? No, sit down. Nope. And when I was at Booker T, they had some incidents up there, and we had a strict band director. I was in the band, and and if you were in that band room when anything was going on, don't you leave out of there. And he meant don't leave, because he had the power of the drumstick. And back in the day, the teachers could whip the kids. Can't whip them now. And he would, if you disobeyed him, he'd tell you go get a drumstick. You went and got that drumstick. You turn around, he'd give you a couple of whacks on your behind. And then you went and sat down or went and practice your music, but you weren't leaving out of there. So a lot of the stuff that happened, I was deep in my house.
And that was just protecting her from, the madness that was going out. And then by them being the way they were at the time, by not letting the kids know what's going on out there. So they was kind of oblivious of a lot of the stuff that was going on out there.
And being the only child, and there was no brothers, that because I had a girlfriend that she had some brothers. Now she could go. She was with her brother, her big brother. But mainly a lot of times she was in the house too. Both of them, but she could get out because of her big brother. But not me.
Now, let's get into that band a little bit, because now my family, we are, I want to say it's about 2 generations of Booker T band members, right? I played my senior year. My sister played, my cousin played, my father, my mother, my uncle, and we're still trying to, I think we figured out, when he graduated. But, I have 2 generations of band members, and I have 2 band members right now growing up here in Stockbridge, Georgia. So, we working these band members through, but tell me a little bit about being a band member at Booker T. Washington.
Oh, wow. It was great. We enjoyed that. I think I was in a band in 65, 66, 67. And majorette. And then in concert band, I tried to play the flute. But my daughter played in after me. Nikki was in the band. Reginald was in the band. Andre was in the band. Well, he was the first. Andre, then Reginald, then Nikki. I think that's how it went. And so I couldn't get George in the band. George wanted to play football. He wanted to have nothing to do with music. So we had 3?
I moved around too much. I don't know. It just didn't hold me. But sports was just my thing, I guess.
Oh yeah, we played what, 2 years? No, yeah, 2 years together. Freshman and sophomore, right?
Sophomore.
Yeah.
But I did everything. I did track, basketball, football. I tried to do baseball, but I wasn't too good at that. I gave up on that.
Yeah, I did.
Coach Powell, he wouldn't let me play tennis. I tried to go out to tennis too. He wouldn't let me play
tennis. And it's funny because Eric brought that up too. Eric played baseball for Booker T. I played 1 year baseball, and I wasn't that good. I came out the next year, and I was like, I had to get a job. it was like, man, I gotta pay for this stuff. But I asked you about the band, because the band, right now the band is having a resurgence at Booker T. And I love what they're doing. They just went down to play at the
New Orleans at the Pelicans.
Yeah. They played the Pelicans basketball game. So, I'm very proud of what's going on at Booker T. Washington right now.
Well, they got a Southern band director.
Oh, we're gonna bring that up.
Yeah. Southern University band director. Yeah. My son's a Southern University graduate, and he's in music. He's band director in Houston at what's the name of school? Westbury High School.
Okay.
So they're here, and they've had Battle of the Bands with Huntington and stuff. And
it was 3 of them.
Yeah,
you've been to 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they've had a good time here with the Battle of the Bands.
Oh, see, that's
he had 2 out of the 3. He won 2, and he lost 1. And guess who he lost against?
Who?
Booker T.
But he didn't participate in the
He lost against Booker T. His alma mater.
I bet he was like, man, I want to be happy, but I ain't happy.
It hurt him. He said, that's all right.
It didn't bother him. With by him losing against Booker T, hey, you can have it.
I know, right? But something, I'm so happy for having you guys on.
Thank you for having
me. I really love talking to you guys about this subject, because it really touched on a lot of things that I love. I love you guys, but I love that you talk about your family, right? I love you talking about Booker T. I love you talking about Allendale, right? We talked about home ownership. We talked about expression through poetry. We talked about your family. This is probably gonna be one of my favorite ones, right?
Well, if we come back and you let me know, I'm gonna see what I can dig up.
Yeah, we got a lot more
stuff that maybe I can dig up, because it's in his house somewhere.
Oh yeah. And you brought up the Reverend. What's the Reverend name?
Reverend Jackman.
Reverend Jackman.
Yeah, we probably have to see if we could talk to him, and try to get, because right now, and I want John know I'm talking about when I say this. We're doing, LSUS has a program, and we're trying to get as many people to talk about growing up in Allendale, growing up in Shreveport from an African American point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to get that program out as much as possible, try to get people to talk about it, get it on, get it recorded, because your stories is what's needed. We need to start putting these stories somewhere and store them so we can listen to them later. Because what usually happens with our history, and we talked about this earlier, our history gets lost because we don't want to talk about it, because it comes with pain. It comes back with some history. Kind of want to forget. But now you see what we're doing now. We're trying to piece together those stories, the little bit we were able to hear. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was talking to Dr. McLemore out there, the archivist at LSUS here just yesterday about that. And someone's donated a whole lot of videotapes that were shot back in the late 70s and early 80s. And they have two separate basic versions of the same show, where there was a white people's version hosted by white people, and then there was Cedric Glover and Larry English's show on town topics. And she said it's quite interesting to see the two different perspectives, because we weren't always that communicative one and another, and so they're getting those digitized, and this is a sort of thing preserving all of that history. I know Dr. McLemore as a friend, and she would love to be able to have these sorts of oral histories saved at LSUS. I know that she would. That's been a fascinating story, and I love the way the house passed through time from one generation to another. That it's almost a lost thing. People just sell and move and rent. You know, they move out and they rent the house, and then it thrashes. So it's amazing to hear a story of something that's been kept up so well, and the books preserved. I wonder if they already have those copies of those books down at the LSU library. I'll ask Dr. McLemore.
They used to be at a couple of the libraries. The library that was, what was the name of the library up the street there? There's a library up there up here by Boogie T. They had some books, and there anymore, library anymore. So I don't know where all those books went, because one of my girlfriends worked there, and I took some books up there. And I have to ask a friend. I have a friend that's in the library system at Atkins Library, and see if they have any.
I would safe to say that it may be
in the archives
downtown, because that's one of the oldest libraries that's been around for a while.
Yeah,
I wouldn't doubt if it.
Yeah, that building was right across from where the bus stopped on Texas, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and the old federal building, courthouse, that's now the library. Yeah.
So it has to be there then.
I hope so. but what a great story. It's amazing to think back on Shreveport passing through all those difficult times. And here we are, we're still just barely communicating one side. Allendale's kind of a nexus, though, where a lot of us have come together, you know, some meeting for the first time in Allendale as we fight to save the historic sites. There's maybe, I think, more than 40 historic sites, culturally significant historic sites in Allendale, and 22 of them are considered by the state historians significant enough to basically, right now, it's stopping people from building that highway through Allendale because there's such significance there. But if we don't keep talking about it and sharing that history, it can slip into the past and get plowed under. Also, that's the value of saving Swepco Park from the highway, is all of the generations. I didn't realize all the history. But wow, y'all, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to talk to Dr. McLemore at LSUS and see if I can find some more information.
Okay.
In his poetry. That's such a great story. Okay. My grandfather used to recite poems. He didn't write them, but you know, before they had radio and TV everywhere, so he just was an old country boy, and he just would read, and then he could sit at night and recite them without needing to read them. So that was how that got passed down. It's fascinating. Lived back then.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you
for having us.
No problem, man.
I like I said, I'm just, this is going to be one of my favorite episodes, because I had a delight hanging out with you all that time, and this is not going to be the last time. You know, you're going to get tired of seeing me come by. So, But I'm just delightful to have you, and great to have you with me here, John.
Man, it's always fascinating to be here. It's an amazing trip through Shreveport's history, and particularly Allendale, and all of it's all coming together in this one tough story about how do we settle the future. Seems to run right through Allendale, whether the highway comes through or not. There's so much more to come. I can't wait to see what's on our next episode.
Oh yeah,
you're a great producer.
Well, I'm gonna try to do my job better because I know I didn't tell you what the topic was gonna be on this.
I had no idea, but I knew it'd be good. So I thought, well, I'll be home from church. I'll go ahead and join in. They had a baptism today and a big party after church for the baptism. So yeah.
Okay.
I got home to do this. So I can't wait to see what's next. Thanks y'all so much.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through the rigmarole of telling everybody thank you for joining us on the Allendale Strong Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the Allendale Strong Podcast and any way that you listen to podcasts. We also have our podcast on Facebook. You can also catch some of our short videos on Facebook. And you can go to YouTube and catch us on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching us. Make sure you subscribe to the video and to our channel. And make sure you hit the like button also so we can get more views on this. And, you know, try to catch us. We try to put it out at least once or twice a month. So just listen for us, or try to look out for us. Hit the little bell so you can get a notification when we put out a video. So from me, John, and our guest, Miss Ozelia. All right, Ozelia and George Washington. Thank you guys and have a great day.
Thank you.